America is quietly changing, not just at the southern border, but in ways that most people haven't noticed yet. While the world's cameras have been pointed at razor wire fences and deportation flights, something else has been happening. Something deeper. Something that, according to demographers and federal data, could reshape the United States for generations. The Trump administration has been, in the words of the Nonpartisan Migration Policy Institute, methodically restricting a wide array of legal immigration pathways, the kind of immigration that built Silicon Valley, filled hospital wards with doctors and nurses, and kept American families connected across continents. And recent federal data tells a striking story. In 2024, the United States was growing faster than it had in 2 decades. Net international migration added nearly 2.8 million people that year alone. The country felt alive with movement, with ambition, with possibility. Then came 2025. When the U.S. Census Bureau released its latest population estimates in January 2026, the picture had changed sharply. America's growth rate had been cut in half, from nearly 1% down to just 0.5%. Immigration, which had contributed 2.8 million people the year before, dropped to 1.3 million. And if current trends hold, Census Bureau projections show the annual net gain from immigration could fall to just 321,000 people by mid-2026. Let that sink in for a moment. From 2.8 million to 321,000 in roughly 2 years. But here is what most coverage is missing. This isn't only about unauthorized immigration, the story the headlines are built around. The deeper, quieter, more consequential shift is what's happening to legal immigration. The engineers, the doctors, the students, the families who waited years, sometimes decades, for a lawful path to come to America. Those pathways, according to immigration policy researchers, are being significantly restricted, one layer at a time. To understand how we got here, it helps to know a little history. This is not the first time America has sharply restricted immigration. In 1924, Congress passed the Immigration Act, commonly known as the Johnson-Reed Act, which established national origin quotas so restrictive that immigration from Southern and Eastern Europe virtually halted, and immigration from Asia was nearly eliminated entirely. It remained in effect for 4 decades. What is happening now is different in character. It targets enforcement and executive action rather than legislation. But analysts at the Migration Policy Institute describe the current pace and breadth of legal immigration restrictions as unusually broad in scope compared to anything seen in recent decades. The scale, the speed, the number of simultaneous pathways being closed at once. That combination is what has researchers paying close attention. Let's go back to January 20th, 2025. Day 1 of Donald Trump's second term. Within hours of taking office, Trump signed an executive order suspending the U.S. Refugee Resettlement Program, the program that had served as the foundation of America's humanitarian commitment since 1980. Since its founding, that program had welcomed more than 3.3 million refugees. Families from Vietnam, Somalia, Iraq, Afghanistan, people who had survived wars, persecution, and displacement had found safety through it. On day 1, it paused. When processing eventually resumed under legal pressure, it restarted at levels that federal tracking data described as the lowest since the modern refugee program began. According to the Migration Policy Institute's April 2026 analysis, drawing on State Department data, just 3,664 refugees were resettled between February and September 2025. And of the actual admissions recorded, the administration resettled 342 refugees during the first several months of resumed processing, the vast majority from South Africa. By October 2025, the administration formally set the refugee admission ceiling for fiscal year 2026 at 7,500 people. According to the Baker Institute and NPR's reporting on the official presidential determination, that is the lowest cap in the 45-year history of the U.S. refugee program. The Biden administration had set the same ceiling at 125,000, a 94% reduction in 1 year. Now, the administration's supporters offer a clear rationale for this. Officials have argued that the refugee system had become vulnerable to abuse, that vetting procedures needed to be strengthened, and that resettlement decisions should prioritize groups they identified as facing genuine discrimination, including, in the case of FY 2026, Afrikaners from South Africa. The argument from the administration's side is that a more controlled, more selective program is ultimately a more credible one. Critics, including congressional Democrats who say the administration violated the legal requirement to consult Congress before setting the cap, see it differently. They describe the cuts as a dismantling of a program that had made America a global leader in humanitarian commitments for nearly half a century. Both perspectives are part of the public record. What is not in dispute is the number itself: 7,500. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, the refugee program is one thing, but what about regular legal immigration? The visa systems that have been functioning for decades? Those are under significant new pressure as well. In June 2025, the Trump administration issued a national security proclamation that fully or partially restricted entry for nationals of 19 countries, covering parts of Africa, the Middle East, Latin America, and the Caribbean. Countries including Afghanistan, Cuba, Haiti, Iran, Venezuela, and Nigeria were among those affected. Then, on December 16, 2025, the administration expanded that order, adding 20 more countries to the list. As of January 1, 2026, according to legal analysis from multiple major immigration law firms including Nixon Peabody and Mintz, the restrictions now cover 39 nations, plus individuals holding travel documents issued by the Palestinian Authority. Countries under a complete entry ban: no tourist visa, no student visa, no work visa, no immigrant visa, include Afghanistan, Burma, Chad, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Yemen, Syria, and others. Countries facing partial restrictions, covering tourist, student, exchange visitor, and all immigrant visas, include Nigeria, Cuba, Venezuela, Zimbabwe, Angola, Senegal, Tanzania, and more. Supporters of the travel restrictions argue they are grounded in national security, that the countries on the list have inadequate screening and vetting procedures, and that restricting entry from them is a necessary step to protect the United States from potential threats. The administration's proclamation stated that goal explicitly. Critics, including immigration attorneys and civil liberties organizations, argue the bans are overbroad, sweeping up millions of people, including families of U.S. citizens and legal residents who pose no security concern whatsoever. Immigration attorney Ana Gabriela Urizar, speaking publicly after the January 2026 expansion, offered a direct message to affected clients. For those from the 39 countries, staying inside the United States was the safest option for now, because leaving could mean not being able to return. There is another dimension of this story that connects directly to the American economy, and it involves a visa most people rarely think about until something goes wrong. The H-1B visa is the primary pathway for high-skilled workers in the United States. According to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services data, approximately 750,000 workers currently hold H-1B status. These are software engineers at technology companies, cardiologists performing surgeries in underserved communities, researchers conducting clinical trials, architects, professors, financial analysts. On September 19, 2025, President Trump signed a proclamation that upended that system. According to the official proclamation, confirmed by the U.S. State Department's own FAQ page, H-1B entry would be restricted unless employers paid a new fee of $100,000 per petition, effective September 21, 2025. The immediate result was significant confusion. H-1B workers abroad rushed to book return flights before the deadline. Companies scrambled to understand the scope. After clarifications from USCIS and Customs and Border Protection, the government confirmed the fee applied to new petitions filed after September 21st, not to workers who already held valid visas. But the $100,000 requirement for new H-1B petitions was upheld by a federal court in late 2025 and remains in effect. The practical consequence, as immigration policy analysts have noted, is that smaller companies, startups, regional hospitals, academic institutions face a far higher barrier to hiring the international talent they previously could access. Many simply cannot absorb a $100,000 fee per hire on top of existing legal and processing costs. The administration's stated rationale is that the H-1B program had been exploited by some employers to undercut American workers, bringing in foreign labor at lower wages to displace qualified domestic candidates. The $100,000 fee, officials argued, would ensure that H-1B sponsorship reflects a genuine, high-value economic need rather than a cost-cutting mechanism. That debate over whether H-1B workers compete with or complement American workers has gone on for years, and economists are genuinely divided on it. What is not debated is what happened next. In December 2025, the State Department abruptly suspended all scheduled December visa interview appointments for H-1B and H-4 applicants. According to an analysis published by the American Immigration Lawyers Association in February 2026, some of those interviews were rescheduled to spring 2026, but others were pushed as far as April 2027. Workers were separated from their jobs. Families were separated across borders. One reported case involved a cardiologist whose visa renewal appointment, already past the biometric stage, was canceled without warning and delayed by months. According to the AILA report, nearly 900 cardiac patients were affected. This is where policy and daily life intersect in ways that data alone cannot fully capture. And in January 2026, another layer was added. According to an AILA policy brief published in February 2026, the State Department paused immigrant visa issuance, the green card pathway, for nationals of 75 countries, instructing consular officers to apply a default presumption of public charge ineligibility. No specific rationale was published by the government explaining why those particular 75 countries were selected or what data supported the designation. Simultaneously, USCIS placed an indefinite hold on processing immigration benefits for anyone born in any of the 39 travel ban countries, regardless of what passport they currently hold. A dual citizen with a passport from a non-banned country is now facing processing delays simply because of where they were born. Immigration attorneys have described the combined effect of these overlapping policies, the travel bans, the H-1B fee, the visa appointment cancellations, the green card pause, and the processing holds, as creating a legal immigration system that is increasingly difficult to navigate even for those doing everything correctly. So what does all of this mean at the population level? According to Census Bureau estimates released in January 2026, the U.S. population reached nearly 342 million in 2025, but growth has slowed dramatically. California, one of the world's largest economies, recorded a net population loss of 9,500 people in 2025. The year before, it had gained 232,000. Net immigration to the state dropped from 361,000 in 2024 to 109,000 in 2025. Florida saw net immigrants fall from over 411,000 to 178,000. New York added just 1,008 residents in all of 2025, as net immigration to the state dropped from 207,000 to 95,600. The South, the growth engine of the 2020s, continued to add people, but the numbers dropped from 1.7 million in 2024 to 1.1 million in 2025. Brookings Institution demographer William Fry, commenting on the census release, said plainly that many of these states will show even smaller growth in the next round of data. And the Migration Policy Institute's April 2026 analysis framed the stakes directly. With U.S. birth rates declining, the population aging, and legal immigration being restricted across multiple pathways simultaneously, the United States faces the possibility of population stagnation, or even population decline, for the first time since 1918. Not the 1970s, not the Great Depression. 1918, when the Spanish flu killed hundreds of thousands of Americans in a matter of months. This brings us to the longer-term economic picture. And this is where the conversation stops being about immigration policy and starts being about something much larger. America is aging. Every day, roughly 10,000 baby boomers turn 65. They are leaving the workforce and beginning to draw on Social Security and Medicare, systems funded by the taxes of working-age adults. For decades, immigration has been a key mechanism for keeping that equation balanced. Immigrants tend to arrive young and working age. They fill critical roles in labor markets. They start businesses. Research has found that immigrants and their children founded more than 40% of Fortune 500 companies, and they contribute to Social Security and Medicare for years before drawing significantly on either program. Critics of high immigration argue that this picture is incomplete, that wage pressure on lower-income domestic workers, strain on housing and public services, and the social costs of rapid demographic change are real and should not be dismissed in favor of a purely economic argument. These are legitimate concerns, and economists continue to debate the trade-offs. What is more broadly agreed upon across the political spectrum is the basic math. A shrinking working-age population relative to a growing retired population puts significant fiscal pressure on government programs, regardless of how one feels about immigration as a policy question. Japan has lived with this reality for 3 decades. Slow growth, workforce shortages, deflation, and a pension system under constant strain. South Korea, Germany, and Italy are grappling with versions of the same challenge. These are wealthy nations with strong institutions, and they are finding it very difficult. America has historically avoided that trajectory because of immigration. Whether the current set of restrictions accelerates or avoids a similar outcome is a question that researchers say will take years to fully answer. But the trend lines visible right now are prompting serious concern among demographers who have no particular political stake in the debate. One final dimension worth noting is the global context. Other countries are watching what is happening in America and responding. Canada has been running active recruitment campaigns aimed at high-skilled workers navigating the U.S. H-1B fee and appointment backlog. Germany updated its skilled immigration laws in 2024 specifically to compete for international talent. Australia has streamlined visa processing for technology workers. The United Kingdom's global talent visa has grown year over year. Shortly after the $100,000 H-1B fee was announced, reporting from Al Jazeera noted that Canada, the UK, and South Korea were among the countries exploring or expanding programs explicitly designed to attract scientists, researchers, and skilled workers who might previously have chosen the United States. The global competition for human capital does not pause because one country steps back. It accelerates, and other nations are moving quickly to fill the space. So where does this leave us? The United States in April 2026 faces a set of demographic and economic questions that go well beyond the politics of any single administration. Federal data shows population growth at its slowest rate in decades. Census Bureau projections, if current immigration levels hold, point to net immigration gains of just 321,000 people by mid-2026, compared to 2.8 million just 2 years earlier. The refugee program, which operated for 45 years as a bipartisan fixture of American foreign policy, has been reduced to its lowest level in recorded history. The H-1B visa system, which underlies much of America's technology and healthcare workforce, now carries a $100,000 fee for new petitions and a backlog of canceled interviews stretching into 2027. Travel restrictions now cover 39 countries. Green card processing for nationals of 75 countries has been paused. These are not proposals. They are in effect. Supporters of these changes argue they are necessary, that the immigration system had grown too large, too vulnerable to exploitation, and too disconnected from American labor market realities. That argument deserves to be heard and seriously considered. Immigration policy involves genuine trade-offs, and the prior system had real problems. But the researchers, demographers, and economists who study population trends are raising a different set of questions. Questions about what happens to an aging society when the pipeline of younger working-age arrivals slows dramatically and quickly. The Migration Policy Institute described the combination of restrictions now in place as unusually broad in scope compared to anything seen in recent decades. Whether that scope is a necessary correction or an overcorrection is a judgment call that reasonable people can and do disagree on. What is not a matter of opinion is the trend. America's population growth, driven for a generation by legal immigration, is slowing sharply. The effects on Social Security, on the labor market, on economic output, on American influence in the world, will take years to fully appear. But the early signals, visible in federal data released just months ago, are clear enough that they have prompted concern across the political and academic spectrum. This is not a story about a border. It is not a story about any single policy or any single proclamation. It is a story about demographic gravity, slow, powerful, and indifferent to politics. And America, for the first time in more than a century, may be beginning to feel its pull.